Ever notice how kids, they just like soak up languages? It's amazing. Today we're diving into that, how to teach English to young learners.
It's really something, isn't it?
It is. And to guide us, we have Practical English Language Teaching, Young Learners.
By Caroline T. Linz and David Noonan.
Exactly. Whether you're a pro or just starting out, even if you're a parent, this deep dive is for you.
What I find fascinating is how this book, it really stresses getting the child where they're at developmentally. You know, it's not just about the words themselves.
Right. Like you wouldn't expect a 6-year-old to be, what, writing poetry?
Exactly. And they actually define young learners as 5 to 12-year-olds.
Okay, so that age range where it's prime time for language.
But honestly, so much of this applies even if you're working with older kids learning English, too.
So it's like those core principles, they carry through.
They really do. And one of the big ones is this idea of developmentally appropriate instruction. It's like you wouldn't teach a kid to multiply if they don't know their numbers yet,
All right. Makes sense. Got to build those foundations.
And language is the same. You got to choose strategies that match their development. Cognitive, physical, their social and emotional development too, even.
So like if a kid's still learning to share, you wouldn't throw them into a debate in English.
Exactly. And here's something else really important. Kids, they don't all develop at the same pace.
Right, of course. Everyone's different.
The book calls it inconsistent development, and it's so true. One kid might be reading novels while another's still on, like, phonics.
Oh, for sure. I've seen that firsthand. And it's not just about reading either, right? Like a child could be really advanced in one area, but then maybe socially, emotionally, they're more like a younger age.
Exactly. It's not a straight line up.
Yeah.
And the book has these great illustrations, figures 1 through 3a, I think. They show these different stages of development. It's really eye-opening. Makes you realize how important it is to tailor things for each kid.
No cookie-cutter approach in the classroom.
No way.
And I love how the book gives you actual ways to figure out a child's interests. Not just guessing, but like really observing how they play, their drawings.
Those drawings can be so insightful, you know?
Right, it's like a secret language. And they even suggest simple surveys. It's like being a detective, but for teaching.
It is. And by understanding what makes them tick, you can make the lessons really connect.
Speaking of connecting, let's talk about how kids learn language in the first place. The book really stresses listening as the foundation, even for reading. So important. Right. So if you want a kid to be a great reader, maybe you start with making listening fun.
You've got it. And there's a difference, too, between really listening, like actively, and just hearing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like zoning out versus actually paying attention.
Exactly. Like when a parent talks to a little kid, they naturally simplify their language. But in a classroom, getting that kind of focused listening, that takes effort.
Absolutely. It's a skill. And then there are all the different learning channels, auditory, visual, tactile. The book dives into those.
And most young learners, they really gravitate towards the visual.
So engaging that is key. Which actually makes me think, when you're planning a lesson, wouldn't it be great to use all 3 channels if you can?
Exactly. And even better, encourage those kids to figure out what works best for them, their own learning style. That can be huge for them.
Absolutely. And speaking of things that are huge, or maybe we'll say highly effective, the book talks about this method, total physical response. TPR.
Oh, TPR is great.
It is. It's like taking language learning beyond the worksheets, making it active.
Exactly. Imagine teaching verbs, but they're acting them out. Jump, and the kids jump. That's TPR.
Love it. They're learning without even realizing it because they're having fun.
And the book even gives examples like using TPR with songs, finger plays, you know, like Eensy Weensy Spider.
Oh, I can just picture that. A classroom full of kids doing that. How cute.
Adorable.
Right.
Right. But it's not just about being cute. Repetition, movement, it all makes it stick.
Totally.
One thing, though, the book stresses giving them time. Let them finish the action before you move to the next instruction. Don't rush it.
Great point. Give them that space to process. It's like sneaking in the learning, right? They're none the wiser. But it makes me think, with all these different learning styles and kids developing at their own pace, how important is it to, adapt these techniques for kids with different needs?
Oh, it's huge. You absolutely have to adapt. I mean, every child is unique.
Right. Makes sense.
It's just like you wouldn't talk to a teenager the same way you talk to a toddler.
Yeah.
Right. So in the classroom, we got to be sensitive to those individual needs. Some kids might need more visuals. Some are all about those hands-on activities. Some might need extra help with specific language challenges. It's all different.
Absolutely. And the book really emphasizes that supportive environment, right? Like, it's not just about giving them the information, it's about making sure each kid feels empowered to learn.
Exactly. And that actually makes me think of another important thing here, the role of parents. Even if a parent doesn't speak English themselves, they can still make a huge difference.
Oh, for sure. So, for our listeners out there who are parents, what are some practical things they can do at home to kind of reinforce what's happening in the classroom?
Well, the book has some great ideas, like reading bedtime stories in English. Even if the child doesn't understand every word, it exposes them to the sounds, the rhythm of the language. It's like a language bath.
I love that. A language bath.
And just encouraging those little conversations in English, asking about their day, what they had for lunch, simple things like that. It builds their confidence.
Those everyday moments, they really add up.
They do. And even just creating that language-rich environment at home, playing English songs in the background, letting them watch cartoons in English, even just putting labels on things around the house.
It's like they're absorbing it all the time, even when they don't realize it.
Exactly.
Now, switching gears a bit, let's talk about assessment. I think this can be a tricky one for teachers and parents too. How do you measure a young learner's progress without freaking them out, making it stressful?
That's where I think this book really shines. It promotes this balanced approach to assessment, using a variety of methods, not just those traditional tests. Because, let's face it, tests can be intimidating for kids, and they don't always show you the whole picture.
So what are some alternatives? If we ditch the pop quizzes, how else can we get a good sense of how a child is doing?
One thing they suggest is weaving those informal assessments into everyday activities. Observe them during playtime, listen when they're telling stories, look at their drawings. All of that gives you valuable clues.
It's like being a detective again.
Exactly. You can even use checklists or those rubrics to track their progress on specific skills, like how many new words they're using, how well they're putting sentences together.
So it's about noticing those little milestones, right? Not just focusing on those big test scores.
Exactly. And giving feedback, regular feedback, that's specific and encouraging. Don't just mark something wrong. Take the time to point out what they did well and give them suggestions for improvement.
It's like saying, hey, you're on the right track. Look how far you've come. That's got to be so much more motivating than just focusing on the mistakes.
Absolutely. And those mistakes, they're a natural part of learning. The book emphasizes creating that safe space for kids to experiment with the language, to take risks without being afraid to mess up.
That's so important, and not just for language learning. It's a life lesson right there.
Isn't it? It's about fostering that love of learning, that sense of curiosity.
And that kind of ties into what we were discussing earlier, doesn't it? About how important it is to really see each student as an individual. But I imagine that takes a lot of careful observation, especially in a busy classroom. Any tips for our listeners on how to make that happen?
It definitely takes effort, but one of the most powerful things you can do is, well, it sounds so simple, but just talk to your students individually.
Oh, like one-on-one time?
Exactly. Even just a few minutes each day. Ask about their interests, really listen to what they have to say. You'd be surprised what you learn.
Those little connections, they make all the difference, don't they?
They really do. It shows you care.
Right.
And the book also suggests creating opportunities for kids to share about their lives in the classroom.
Oh, interesting. So bringing in their own experiences.
Exactly. Show and tell, having them tell stories, even just some journal writing.
Oh, I bet those journals can be so revealing.
They can. You get to see their language developing, how they think, even how they're feeling. It adds so much to the picture.
So it's like you're gathering these insights from all these different places. Observation, those one-on-one moments, then getting a peek into their world through things like writing.
You got it. And as you put those pieces together, you can really personalize the learning experience for each kid.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, one last thing that caught my eye. The book's dedication mentions someone named Catherine Z. Weed, and it seems like she was really instrumental in encouraging teachers to respect kids' cultural backgrounds. Got me thinking about how we can all create those more inclusive learning environments.
So important, right? And the book really stresses that respecting a child's culture, it's not just nice, it's fundamental to their language learning.
It's all connected. So instead of treating language like it's this separate thing, we're acknowledging that it's woven into a child's whole identity.
Exactly.
What would that look like in the classroom, I wonder? Any examples?
Oh, absolutely. Encourage kids to share stories or songs from their cultures. Bring in objects, artifacts, things that are meaningful to them. Even invite guest speakers from different backgrounds.
I love that. It makes it so much more real and relevant to their lives.
Exactly. When we embrace that diversity, it enriches the experience for everyone.
This has been such a fantastic conversation. So, to sum it all up for our listeners, I think the big takeaway here is that teaching English to young learners, it's about so much more than just grammar rules and drills. It's about understanding how they learn, nurturing their love of language, and creating that fun, supportive environment where they can thrive. And with the insights from practical English language teaching young learners, you'll be well on your way. Happy teaching, everyone.